Dando sequência aqui, então, aos nossos trabalhos, né, a gente vai passar para o terceiro painel, que é o painel do Deals and Beyond, né, para liderar essa sessão. Mais uma vez, a nossa estrela, Katherine O'Neill, vai liderar. Esse painel vai ser liderado pela Katherine. Os panelistas vão ser seria o Augusto Moratório, o Luiz Pacheco vai estar representando o Augusto, né, que é da C2 e Anjos do Paraná, que não pôde vir por um outro compromisso. Queria convidar o Fernando Campos, da Gavea para participar desse painel também. A colega Cláudia Ludro Trejos, da Angel Ventures México. A Deise Gomes, da Anjos do Brasil. E o Guilherme Com, da Nascente TI Confrapar.
Well, due diligence is the part that none of the angels like. It's all this hard work, okay? You've got the company in, you're excited about it. Now you got to really find out, are they doing what they're saying they're doing? Do the numbers match? Have they paid their taxes? All of that good stuff. So I think most groups have a due diligence package and of the things that they check, which we do. But every time we start due diligence, Jumpstart does it after the company presents and there's enough interest in investing in them. A lot of groups do a lot of due diligence on the companies that come into them before they're asked to present. And sometimes they work with them and polish them. Everybody's different. We do think that sometimes a group drags out due diligence a lot. So we have a map that says 60 days to close. And one of our engineers essentially went through the days and said, if everything works out perfectly, if the company has all their information, theoretically, you can close in 60 days. But average close days are 90 or 100 days plus because the company doesn't have the information, the group can't meet together to talk to the company, drags out. But I do want to mention, so standard process, everybody has these problems in verifying what's going on. I do want to mention one thing that we have done in the last few years that we did not do when we first started. We do background checks on our CEOs and the senior management team of a company. It used to be there was a small startup environment, but that's not true. It's really gotten larger and larger, and you never know what you're going to find in someone's background. Maybe they went bankrupt before, maybe they've been arrested for driving under the influence several times, and do you really want to deal with that as a CEO? So we're doing that, and we're also doing this as another due diligence. We started doing it on our new members. So again, it used to be there was a very small environment of active angel investors. Now it can come from anywhere. And so do you really know this is that person? Do you really, so all our members agree to a background check, a simple background check when they become members of Jumpstart. So I throw that out as another due diligence area.
In many of the countries, this might be so different. Specifically for the case of Mexico, we are the only group which is actively investing, which means we are receiving pipeline from all the country. We have a centralized office in Mexico City, and we have 4 regional chapters. But pretty much all the information is reviewed in Mexico City. Before applying to our process, we asked all of our entrepreneurs to do an application through Ghost, which is a platform that many of you might know. We ask basically for a business plan where we can understand what do you want, which is your business model, how the investor is going to be rewarded for investing with you and all this stuff. And then after our previous review, we decided which companies we're going to put in our portfolio to present to the investors. We do this because we receive so many deals in terms that so many people call every day or send an email, or they just step in the office, which here is my business plan. So we cannot deal with all the projects because since the industry is not that developed in Mexico, we don't have like many Y Combinators who go to really seed capital or something. We cover pretty much, our smallest investment is $75,000, and our largest is $3 million, which is a really broad range. And if to that you add the thing that we are investing that in almost every industry because we have a really broad portfolio, because it works both ways. We receive all kind of entrepreneurs and we receive all kind of investors. So we have a really, really huge pipeline to deal with. So we first ask for these few steps to do before starting a formal process. What we have realized, to make it really quick, is like for every 50 calls, emails, people stepping in the office, we have actually 2 complete projects, which is a way to filter all the projects that really, like, you are asking for $2 million, you should be able to upload a business plan. I'm not asking for too much, and sometimes that's too much for some people. So you know upfront that probably is not the kind of entrepreneur you're wanting to deal with. After this phase, we present our projects in events. We do a monthly breakfast with our investors, and we have an annual cocktail. And also we have showcase specific. We have a dynamic that we like to call like Dragon's Den type, where we have family offices which have important companies in Mexico which are interested in investing in this kind of companies to strengthen their portfolio. So we have all these activities, and if you are included in the portfolio, you can access these events and the showcases. So this is pretty much how we do it. The project, the investment process, it's definitely longer than in the US, for example, which is the country that we have information. Our shortest time from the time we accepted the company in the portfolio and the first round of capital was received was 4 months and a half, and the largest was probably 2.5 years. So it takes so much more longer than 60 days. It depends on, it's also, I think it's a weakness that we invest in many enterprises, and in terms of the due diligence, if you have a checklist, for example, that is supposed to fit every kind of company, of course, after you finish this part, you have to do a specific due diligence for every company. We have finance companies, we have healthcare companies, we have retail companies, we have internet companies, and you cannot just assume that your first checklist will fulfill all this part. So the process is totally
We didn't invest in company yet. We have sort of process that we're trying to make it better every time. Augusto is the one that filters the companies that comes to the group. He chooses the ones that he thinks are most developed and they have the business plan that's suitable for the group. Then the chosen companies do a small presentation, like 20, 30 minutes, presenting the business. After we have like Q&A. After that, I'm the finance guy, so I do the valuation, and that's pretty much it. We did like a company we trying to invest. It took about like 90 days to the process go through. But after that, the entrepreneurs, they just decided that the company was valued 3 times that we almost agreed upon, so we gave up. We're now implementing Gust to make things easier, and we hope that make things like a little bit faster. About term sheet, we have a lawyer that helps us with term sheet, so you don't have any holes in there. And after that, we didn't invest yet, but I think, as Katherine said, we're going to do background check on the senior management and founders of the company to see if everything is in order. And I think there's not much to invent in the due diligence process.
The members of Gavea Angels for this very kind invitation. Congratulations for the birthday. We have invested in 8 companies so far, and just now the last ones that we have invested in are the ones who had a previous angel round, and we find it very important. Most of the companies that we have previously invested, we were the first investor, so all the due diligence process took much longer, and this work that has to be done to go talk to the client, try to evaluate the product, something that when you have an angel investor previous to a Series A, it's much better. Well, now we see this happening. Previously, it took us a long time to do that work. So go with the entrepreneur, talk to clients, try to do the first sales pipeline. I think it's we find this due diligence process. Well, it's not only us. It's not only the venture capitalist or the angel investor who's trying to find a new associate, a new partner in a company. The other side is also trying to look for a new partner. So we try to make all the process as transparent as it can be. After all, we're talking about a 5-6 year relationship, so it's better to have all the everything aligned from head start. So when the entrepreneur is approved in our first analysis, the first thing that we do is that we show all our documents, our term sheet template, all the process that we want the company to go through, and we don't ask any kind of exclusivity or no shop agreements. We try to show the entrepreneur to be as transparent as we can be how we work, and in the end maybe there's a term that he doesn't agree, or there's something that he doesn't believe is the right thing to do, then it's better to talk about it in the beginning of the process. Then we don't lose time, he doesn't lose time. Normally for investors, losing time analyzing a company, so you just said that you lost 3 months talking to a company and then you didn't agree on a valuation. For us, it's part of the deal, but for the company, that represents less sales, less people, and less time to operate. Yeah, I think that is basically it. Something that you said about the person background, that you check for the management team, you do the background. We do this either formally and not formally. I mean, we ask for all the declarations, tax declarations, etc. But most important is the due diligence that we do on that entrepreneur during the process of analyzing. So you mentioned sometimes the guy doesn't want to give me a business plan. So if he doesn't want to give me a business plan, then I can expect that he will have problems later, because that would be step one. We try to do this as much as we can. So our investment analysis, it takes normally 6 months from the day that he first reaches us to the day that we have the, well, 6 months is very optimistic, but normally 8 months. But and it's a process that even when the entrepreneur normally has a no as an answer, he enjoys somehow, because we try to go to the first clients. We identify as much as we can all the problems that we see, and not as a reason not to do business with them, but listen, you have to get your technology is not running very well, so if you want to, you have to go back, rethink everything that you're planning, because otherwise we cannot talk. And most of the times, well, for everybody here, we have to say no, but the company leaves the process with something more, and that helps. That's very important for us as well. So basically, that's it.
It's interesting that, you know, as an angel investor here is in Brazil, our process in Gavea Angels and is not very different in terms of screening and selecting the company. So we basically have a screening committee that selects, I don't know, up to 10 companies in every round that we have. And out of those, 3 come out that are going to be presented to the rest of the angels. And up until that, there's no due diligence at that point. So it's not needed. It's too much hassle for this first stage. So we usually do the same after the term sheets where we start with the actual due diligence. And there's not really much you can do. I mean, even though in Brazil we are very used to red tape and all the certifications that are usually required, you can do a background check. You usually do a credit check to see what kind of person is that. You know, if he doesn't owe a lot of money around the market, and you try to get some references to the person to see if whatever he tells you he actually did. But after that, I mean, the real issue is, like Guilherme said, these negotiations in Brazil still take a lot of time. So it's expected. You should expect at least 2 to 3 months to close an angel round in Brazil, and even that if it's the lead angel is actually pushing things forward. Because what happens is, I had a deal that I was negotiating, then almost went south because of all the requirements in terms of due diligence. All the certifications here in Brazil, you can get this kind of certifications from the government, and it goes through everything, like real estate, cars, and everything, legal issues the person may have. So, and these documentations take a long time. It may take upwards to a month for an entrepreneur to get them. So we have to be careful not to ask for too much, because one of the things that we realize is that, then it's obvious, probably the same as the US, as the longer it takes, the easier it is for the whole deal to cool off, for investors to lose their interest, and entrepreneurs to get demotivated and start looking for somewhere else. I had a deal that went south that it took around 6 months of negotiation, and in the end everybody wanted to just give up, and everybody just chose one of the silliest terms in the term sheet that had nothing to do with the valuation. Was okay, salaries was okay. Salaries is a big issue here in Brazil for the entrepreneurs, and in the end they ended up discussing liquidation preference, and they said, no, we're not going to do it because you have a liquidation preference clause there, and it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. It was a 1x liquidation preference, so it was no big deal, and was what everybody does in the market. So in the end, I mean, the entrepreneurs were looking to get out, and the angels themselves were tired of such a long negotiation. So we have to be careful. I think that don't make due diligence take too long. Most of the deals that come to us are pre-revenue. Some of those are in the PowerPoint stage. Some of those are already operational, but they have really small results. So there's not much for you to go about and try to do a whole big due diligence on the company. I mean, we do go through their proposed finances. We go through their numbers, because usually entrepreneurs have no idea how much money they need. They usually ask a lot more than they need. They jump stages. They're asking for $2 million for a pre-revenue company that still has to validate their model, and that's where I usually take the most time. Is redoing their financial projections with them, and it's there. You still can take too long, because you might lose the timing.
I think that I have a huge challenge now, because in fact I'm here, as I said, on behalf of Cássio Spina, and of course I'm not an investor, but I'm a member of the council, advisory council, and where my role is to help the group in order to develop entrepreneurs and investors. So my focus is on the career. How can we develop career, executive career, and of course entrepreneur career. But I think that all my colleagues here have already told us about the complexity of all of this, of the due diligence process. But I think that we are very focused on this as an association, and we have developed, in fact, we are very worried about the early stage and how to teach and how to help, how to be supportive, not only for the investor, but also for the entrepreneurs. And I think that the contribution that I can present today is that we have launched a simple form and simple questionnaire with questions that can be helpful for the early stage companies, and of course for the early stage investors, angel investors. So I think that this is my contribution now, and I'm here to learn and to understand all the issues that this group have in order to work with Cássio and all the group. Thank you very much.
I think all the ideas that people have talked about clearing information early. You don't want to go to do too much due diligence if you haven't sort of agreed on a rough valuation, if they don't understand the term sheet. All of these things are really important to get up front, because you can go through the whole process and the deal will die. And I totally agree with the longer it takes to get the deal done, the odds of it getting done get lower and lower. The other thing I'd mention, and someone talked about it too, is that how they're treating you before you sign the check is not going to get any better after you sign the check. So if you have somebody who is not easy to deal with, or who is, you see something just occurring, you may not be inclined to do the deal. despite our optimism as investors, and we are optimistic. Think about this. We're investing in these terribly risky businesses, expecting them to deliver a projection which we know is going to be half of what they show. And so we're optimistic about it, and we go in with good faith. And they actually, the entrepreneurs go in good faith because we're in partnership with them. But boy, if it doesn't work out in the beginning, it's not going to get better when that check is signed. And it's true of VC partners too. If you bring in another investor partner and you're not happy how they're treating you or the company, you know, it's a way to exit. I think that, and to go back to the thing about knowing the entrepreneur, we did that to the beginning, but we just felt that we didn't have enough information. And one of the things the Angel Capital Association did was have a group called Castle Branch, which is a background credit check company. And we use that now because it gives us one more piece of information that we didn't have before. And we don't know everybody in the region. We don't know everybody from Connecticut to Virginia. So I think that, so a question for all of you, what's the best way you've found, or is there a tip that you've learned in due diligence process that you think is really important? Is it having, someone mentioned that the entrepreneur doesn't necessarily have all the documents or the certifications. And it's right, when you come in the second time, after we've invested with a company, we know they're going out, we say, get your book ready. Have all of this information in a book so when someone's ready to go, you have it ready. I mean, that's one of the things that's very helpful. Anything that the rest of you have found that's really critical in your process or something you've learned? We have deal teams led by members, so every deal team is different, and how they handle the due diligence. We have some lists, but it's not the same. So there are groups that will be really good in due diligence, and run by the engineers. I'll give the engineers a shout out here because they are obsessive on those lists. But then there's the people who do too much gut reaction. Oh, I like this entrepreneur, I like this plan. So that's an interesting take on it too. But the deal team itself has to decide whether they're ready.
First, in the part of getting to know an entrepreneur, what we have realized is we always have meetings. Before we include them in the portfolio, it's for us to really, really important to have meetings with them, especially because of this part of the personality. Like if you're not getting along with him or her at the beginning, it's not gonna get better. That's something we learned the hard way. So yeah, and this optimism about maybe a project or a technology, it's totally true. Maybe sometimes in Mexico, and I think it's a cultural problem, many times entrepreneurs relate investors to, oh, that rich man who wants to make money with my idea, or all these things, all these bad and wrong ideas we have around an investor. Sometimes there are entrepreneurs that you realize that maybe they are not sure that they want the money because of the way they think about an investor. They are not in an open way to have a negotiation or to think about a person that they don't even know in the first stage or process, because we first do this pre-screening. The second thing is we always have this valuation fight before we go with investors, because we know the valuations are really, really high. We know that they are applying financial intelligence and they are applying what they know about valuation, but that's not exactly what is reflected. There are many adjustments that they have to do. What we have done about this is, if we find a really, really nice project with an awesome business model and with an entrepreneur who's willing to negotiate, even if the valuation is high, what we do is you have the opportunity to present your project in our breakfast in front of all of our investors. If from 70 people, you don't have one interested and your project is really good, the conclusion is the valuation is too high. And I'm not saying that. It's not Angel Ventures Mexico who wants to undervalue your project. It's the market who's saying it's just expensive. That's another thing that we have learned. Because if you try to negotiate to do a negotiation on an investment that you don't know who the investor is going to be is losing time. Many times it depends a lot in the investor who's giving the money, the conditions. If you are giving me synergies, if you are giving me smart money, if you are giving me clients, if you are giving me suppliers, well, we can talk about the different valuations. So we always ask them to have like a portrait of how it's going to be, like a first valuation, but we are always willing for them to be wanting to negotiate.
Well, I agree that the valuation part is always the most stressing one, I guess. And I think it's the part where the business is a go or no go, really. So I think the most important part is aligning valuation and money issues, because usually the entrepreneur says he needs $1 million and his company worth $5 million, when in fact he only needs 100K and his company is worth 1 million tops. And most of the time, entrepreneurs doesn't know that because they just don't know finance. And sometimes it's pretty difficult to convince them or to show them that the amount of money they're asking is not necessary, because they're going to have a lot of money in their account that's going to be just stay there doing nothing. And as I said before, our first deal that almost went through stopped on the valuation, because the entrepreneurs just, after going to a fair and made some contacts, they said we were 3 times more now, with no plausible excuse, just because they made some contacts, and that's where the deal failed. So I think the valuation part's the most important one.
Let me just ask the question, did they ever come back after they didn't get the money, and didn't get the 3 times valuation, I'm assuming later on, the larger valuation, did they come back to you for funding?
No, they said that's our value now, it's take or leave it. We said leave it, and they said, okay, we're going to finance ourselves, we're going to sell our apartment or something like that. But
Yeah, really.
We have some foreigners here, some people from the United States, so you must all have realized that all this angel investing and venture capital in Brazil is really in its early moments, early years. And something that is very good for us in terms of due diligence is when, and something very, very new to Confrapar at least, is that when you have a company, not only when it has some badges, but not saying you got the prize for being the top startup in 2012. I'm not saying that, but when it has previous investors and previous serious investors, and that's something that most of the people here are working with angel investing. We are the ones who come next, right? And when we have someone, this company, who are the partners so far, we have some people from Gavea Angels, for example. It means a lot to us, not only because, well, they've been through a long process. They don't, of course, the same process that we do mostly, but also because we have some more people that also believe that that company specifically is a very good company. We've been analyzing companies since 2007 in Brazil, and that's something very modern. The first companies that we have invested in, they no previous investors. So now we are for the first time negotiate with these companies, and it means a lot to us. And sometimes we are okay to pay higher valuations because we understand that for that person who was there before, it actually the value increases indeed. So for us, that's something very modern and very important. So.
Well, yeah, definitely having someone to refer you, the entrepreneurs, is great. And thank you, Guilherme, for talking about Gavea Angels. But it's interesting that, with the valuation thing is, I try not to focus on the company's value because it's rational to try to define a value to a company that has no revenues, no history, nothing. And even if it does have some revenues, it's usually 6 months or a year of revenue. So that, Excel accepts anything you put on it. It could be a $100 million company. It could be nothing. So I think it's a waste of time, especially in the angel round, that you're spending discussing how much the company is worth. So what we usually do in Gavea is we usually let the entrepreneurs beforehand know what are the possible expectations. So they know that we only do minority investments. So we look for a minority stake. They know that this investment is usually, the share that we're going to ask is usually between 20 and 40%. And then it's a matter of deciding how much money the person actually needs or how much money are we willing to invest. So you get your valuation indirectly from those numbers. And it's easier to do this way because you're not discussing something ethereal as, you know, how much I'm going to make in the next 6 years. So usually we try to bring the discussions to how much money he needs, and if we're willing to put up that money for the minority stake that we usually are willing to invest with, which is, I don't know, anywhere between 20 and 40%. So they already know beforehand how high they will be able to get. So if an entrepreneur gets there thinking that they're going to get a 10 million, 15 million, 20 million reais valuation, they already understand that it's not going to happen. If they come asking over $1 million reais, we usually turn them down and say, okay, this is not the amount of money we usually do invest in, but we're willing to discuss your number. If you open us your numbers, what you're expecting, we can show you how much money you actually need. There were cases in Gavea where we actually increased the investment requested by the entrepreneur because we thought it just wasn't enough for that stage that he was trying to show us. So usually we try to focus on that. And regarding due diligence, actually, one thing that's pretty obvious is I think the moment that you say hi for the entrepreneur for the first time is already a due diligence, right? Because you're already evaluating the person from there. It's exactly like that. It's a person you're going to be stuck with for, I don't know, the next few years. So the chemistry has to work. And this is something that we're learning here in Brazil, that, you know, a deal is not a project deal, is a person deal. So you're dealing with people, and that's the person you're putting your money with. So regardless of, obviously the project has to be good, but regardless of the project, that person is the most important thing. So can you relate with him? Does he listen to you? Does he, is he open to new ideas? Or is he pretending to be open to new ideas? Because that's the worst kind, right? The guy who comes up to you and say yes to everything, and a day later discards everything you told him. And usually that's a good thing about the screening committee, because at the screening committee, you already get a good look at the entrepreneur. At Gavea, we have usually 2, maybe 3 meetings with the screening committee and the entrepreneurs before we present them. So we already have a good grasp on the type of person that person is before doing any background checks. So, and then after that, after the presentation and after the members show their interest, you can see that you have still more time to talk to the entrepreneurs, usually a few more meetings. And actually, after presenting the deal, we usually try to get to the term sheet as fast as we can, because that's when you kill those biggest issues. You take those big rocks out of your way, right? So the valuation is around here. The salaries are around here. Big issue here. Entrepreneurs in Brazil love salaries. You know, they want to have comfortable salaries usually, and after that, you know, they're usually very okay with board seats. They're usually okay with tag-alongs, drag-alongs, and whatever else you show them. So that's basically the way we do it.
I don't want to be repetitive, and as I said, I'm learning to work on this environment. But regarding angel investors and angel investment, I'm fully agreed with your point of view, and I think that things should be easier. So this is our contribution. We are trying to make things easier.
I think this issue of getting everything up front is really critical. I mean, the fact that what your expectations are, what the expectations are from them, and at the same time, you said something that was very important, which is when you look at the numbers, you added more money. And that's true for, I think, a Smart Angel group, because you've got to work through the numbers. We invested in a company, which I refer to as, it was an iPhone app. It was 2 guys, and I say there was a dog there, but there really wasn't a dog. So that was the link, that was the company. They had all the best intentions in the world. They had everything done. they could not put together a P&L or a balance sheet to save their souls. And so everything was re-looked at this. They only needed a certain amount of money, but when it was looked at, of course they needed more money. They forgot the cost of receivables and the delay and the timing issues. So we understood who they were and what they were doing. They weren't incompetent, they just didn't know finance, but they also had a board member who was coming on from Jumpstart, they took care of all of that. But that's important to decide who you trust in a business and will move forward on. And to give them the right amount of money that they need. Because the worst thing you can do is not give them the right amount of money and they can't reach the milestone. And in fact, with that company, because it was a new company, the money was tranched in about 3 different cycles in the original term sheet. So that they knew that if they did this X amount of months, there'd be another amount. And that just saves renegotiating everything. You may have also heard the valuation metrics, which say, proof of concept, $500,000. IP, add another $500,000. So it's still an art. It's not a science. And you can, build your valuation on a couple of fingers. Yeah, we say it's more scientific than that, but sometimes that's it. I mean, you're in the ballpark. That's the important part. I think maybe the time for closing. Any open questions?
Okay, now just exchanging some thoughts in here, just some experience, in fact. If you have some difficulties in dealing with business models, in finding startups that actually doesn't even have a business model, you can imagine how it's hard for an industry that is ordinarily based on a strict market to start this link with startups and with these young entrepreneurs. So once again, that's why Bosch is trying to have a link not with these startups, but with investors that have already passed this screening phase. And that's my actually purpose in being here today, because I think that is more important for a company to have a more mature level, a more mature investment. So I invite you all the angels in here to exchange some contacts, because we would like to have a better look in our portfolio, and because I think that once you have already selected some business, it's easier for a company, for an established company, to identify if it suits its strategy or not.
A few comments. You talked about screening and also due diligence. And I understand the importance of having a complete business plan and spreadsheets completed. It means that entrepreneurs pay attention to that. But there are, I think, important things that I think are missing. So one is, you as an angel, you like the idea. And this is more or less more a gut feeling, more intuition than scientific. But do you believe in this idea? It's a credible story. This is something that makes sense. So that's something important for you. But the second and most important thing that I think is missing is, you as an investor, what is your competitive advantage in supporting this business? Well, I have a track record. I have experience in this industry, so I'll be able to support and to make this business grow. And that's my competitive advantage as a investor, to help this business. So I think that's, as an investor, I invest in some companies, but that's the kind of thing that I try to see. So am I capable of supporting this business in a better way that another investor will do? I think that's probably as important as valuation, because it will influence the valuation.
I think you're right, and I think what happens too is that I'm going to do due diligence on the people who are offering them money, because if they can only offer them money and not the expertise and the introductions, then shame on the company for not, if they have multiple sources of funding to evaluate, they should be doing due diligence on the investor. Who can help me get farther along?
Thank you for your comments, and I totally agree. When we first receive a company, we ask for executive summary or a pitch, and from the moment that this company is approved in our first analysis, we do the same. We do our pitch, and we take it very seriously. And the first thing that we offer to the entrepreneurs is all the contacts, phone numbers, email, everything of all the entrepreneurs that we have invested in. And we don't call the entrepreneurs to say, oh, there's someone calling you, so you better say good things. We don't do that, not always, but it's very serious for us, because it's not only about good business opportunities. If it doesn't seem right, equally right for both parts, and if the entrepreneur thinks that I'm losing something instead of winning, then it won't work. And well, thanks for your comments.
When you mentioned that, when you talk about the American market and obviously the due diligence and how big the market has gotten, it makes sense. But right now in Brazil, I mean, we're at the start of a trend here. So there are very few angels in Brazil, very few VCs. So right now we are at the stage. It's actually a comfortable stage where, not only that, but everybody knows everybody. So if there's an entrepreneur who does something bad to another investor, we're likely all going to know. You know, this market, it's still very small, so people do gossip about what's happening with the other companies. So,
we do too.
Yeah.
Groups all talk to each other everywhere. No, there's nothing is sacred.
So, but obviously, you have to know the reputation of the fund or the people who are running it. What are the intentions? How hands-on are they, or how involved they're going to be? And this is also something that I think it was discussed earlier today, that, you know, a lot of the people and a lot of the angels usually don't want to lead the rounds because they're first-time angels, or they just did one investment and they're not really ready to give their time to the company. I mean, to give a lot of their time to the company. So this is something that we're struggling still here in Brazil, is to find angels who are willing to lead the investments and go along with the entrepreneurs, because it makes a lot of difference. You know, I recently decided to make a change at some of my investments, where I brought them into my office. You know, I got a new office large enough for them to be with me, and this is something that they wanted. They asked us to do it because they said, no, we need to be closer. You know, we can't deal with the formal reunions or meetings in like once a week. It's not enough. We need to be able to get all the expertise for the angels as much as we can. So this is something that we're trying. We're trying not to micromanage them. This is not our intention, because we have to be very careful when you're sitting right next to the guy and the guy's playing, you know, video games on the computer. You kind of look, you know, hey, where's the work? It's my money in there. So, but it's working. So far, it's working very well. So it's something that we're experiencing here.
What means the angel investing? My perception is that in Brazil, since we're in the beginning of the ecosystem, especially in the beginning of the approach from the entrepreneurs toward the angel investors, my perception is that 80%, maybe 70% of the entrepreneurs that seeks an investment from angel investors or VCs don't have a clue what that is a creative capital. Basically, they are looking for easy money. In your case, that you spend 3 months talking to those entrepreneurs, and 3 months after just a science fair, they just gave up because the valuation jumped 3 times from the beginning after 3 months. It's crazy stuff. I would like to it's my perception that is 80%, 70% of the entrepreneurs. I'd like to hear your perceptions and your point of view from the U.S., because I suspect that is the other way around. Maybe 20% doesn't have a clue or less. And maybe if Francisco Banha could add some perception from Europe, just to think about it, that different perceptions of what means an investment, a creative capital investment?
Well, I think it depends on the entrepreneur. I think it also depends on the capabilities of the entrepreneurs. At least in Angel Ventures Mexico, we have the experience of the average age of our entrepreneurs 35 years, and most of them are MBAs, and most of them have from 6 to 8 years of corporate experience, which means most of the cases they came from a scenario where they're working for Procter & Gamble or Unilever or some of these companies, and they find this market opportunity that they say, oh, okay, when I was working there, everyone complained about this. And then they go to their MBA or something like that, and they come back and start an enterprise behind that. It's totally different from an entrepreneur who's coming out from college. Definitely the kind of advice that a post-MBA guy needs from a college grad is totally different. That's the first part. The second part is, obviously you want to work with someone who can help you. How much do they evaluate it? It depends on how much the investor is putting on the table. We have a specific case which is a total success. It's a company who is in food and beverage, and one of our investors is like the family office of one of the largest food and beverage listed companies in Mexico. So this company in particular, the entrepreneurs were working, they started like a social activity, like a philanthropy, to help people who's in rural areas, like working with, I don't know, apple juice, and they are doing organic products that they cannot deliver to the people who actually can pay them, because there's a huge difference. They don't have the scale and all this stuff. They start like a social venture, and they realized that there was a real business opportunity there, that the organic market was growing, and they turned that like philanthropic effort into a company. They start working, but of course you're working with many micro-entrepreneurs in several parts of Mexico. So they start working like that, and they ask for capital in order to grow their distribution. When we put this investor in front of them, the reaction was they were looking for money, I don't know, for assets like trucks, refrigerators, for marketing and publicity, for to have more power in front of the supermarket chains and all that stuff. And when they came, they were like, okay, no, I understand your business better than you, trust me. I'm a listed company. What you need is more money. And if you need trucks, you can have my trucks. And if you need infrastructure, you can have my infrastructure. You need a marketing plan, don't worry, I have a whole floor in my corporate building who's working on that, so we can totally work with that. What you actually need is to help your providers to improve their processes, and you have to invest in your providers, because it's people who doesn't have like the money or the capital to develop that by themselves. So you are actually funding your providers and you're growing the business. I think it's so far one of our best cases. Of course, they see the huge difference, and they realize that the investor knew much more about their business than they actually do, and they appreciated that, and obviously the valuation changed, because they were not just given money, they were not just given infrastructure, they were given a too many years vision in that industry that totally helped to turn down the whole business. And they were also really disciplined, because they were moving from being a family company, which is something really typical in Mexico, and I guess in the rest of Latin America, where you have, it's my brother, my father, my sister, and we sometimes do the things that we have to, but we sometimes don't, because it's all in family. They were like really disciplined into get things alone to meet the milestone that were set at the beginning. It totally depends. It's not like they are, sometimes the entrepreneurs know exactly what they are doing, but when they realize that the investors know even better what they need, there's definitely an opening to that option. So I don't think that you can put that in a general perspective. It depends totally on their age, their previous work experience, their previous entrepreneurial experience. And also, it's not just the side of the entrepreneur, it's also the side of the investors. Previous work experience, previous entrepreneurial activity. It's a balance. It depends. You can find dramatic cases when, yes, entrepreneurs are totally lost and they just want money, and when someone just wants money, you really don't want to work with him or her.
Entrepreneur. In Brazil, some of them doesn't know what an angel investor is, so they just go do their pitch without knowing what's going to happen. Some just want the money and that's it. And we have a case right now that we're doing a follow-through with the company that the entrepreneur is not caring that much about the money, but she needs the help of the angel investors with marketing, finance, because it's the things that she doesn't master. And she needs that kind of help right now. For her, it's more important than money. So some investors, they just go for the money, and others just go for the experience and skills of the investors.
Experience. I wonder about the experience here in Brazil. In that point, as you said, no, when you are in front of the entrepreneur and you change the point of view in the valuation of the company from the, let's say, free cash flow to how many money you need, and let's trade this money for 10, 15, or 20% of the company. How is it the reaction of the entrepreneurs, or how is it the experience? Do they react correctly? Do they run away? What is the experience you
Just
have?
let me see if I understand. You want to know what the reaction is when you propose them to talk about the number they require. It's usually not bad, because it's not something like that where I say, let's bring this number to half of what you're asking for 20% of your company. I don't talk about the 20% of my company. He knows that it's going to be between 20 and 40, because he knows the kind of investment that we usually do. We usually, at the screening committee, we usually explain how it works. But when I talk about the numbers, I said, okay, you need $2 million. It's usually what they come, a lot of them come with these high numbers. Okay, show me why you need this number. This is where we start. Show me why do you need this number. And at some, a minority of them usually have a worksheet that shows that number. They have no idea how to prove the number that they're asking for. So, and I don't really try to, corner them or anything. I just say, okay, if you can't show me, let's do it together. Let me see what you think you're going to be selling. Show me what your expenses are, where you're going to invest in, what you're going to do with the money effectively. And let's do like a 12-month to 24-month projection to see how that's going to behave. And then I show them through that simple simulation that, that actually to do all that you asked, you need like 300,000 reais, 400,000 reais. And then usually they really don't have much argument to say, no, we want the 2 million, because they have no more arguments. Sometimes the entrepreneurs do have good worksheets, but usually see that they're exaggerating. They're spending 500,000 worth of marketing, and I said, okay, it makes sense as long as you can bring a positive ROI in this marketing investment. Especially with web companies, you can very easily see if the money is being well invested or not. The results are real time almost. So it usually you try to lead them into discussing the expenses and not really the big revenues or anything. Just discuss with them, because when you discuss the expenses, what they need, the number of employees and everything, if then after that he agrees with you and then he throws a huge revenue number, he said, okay, so you don't need any investment. So he's working against himself. So usually they say, no, okay, I think revenues are going to grow 3% on the year. I said, okay, 3% is too little. And then he sees that he has to actually prove that number in a more thoughtful way. So usually what we do is, at least what I do, and like Katherine said, it's very personal the way everybody does. I do it like that. I usually try to lead them into discussing the actual need of the money, and then after that, he already has his valuation. He knows how much he needs.
We totally agree that we invested in person besides the company. So I think it's the key issue, the person. Yeah.
And if the person doesn't react very well, I won't accept show you my numbers because we haven't signed an NDA or anything. Usually it means it's probably not going to work. The guy's too suspicious and everything.
I just had one comment, and just to complement something that Fernando said, how some of the actions we do at Gavea Angels in terms of getting to know the entrepreneur. Now, after let's say the investment group is formed, after the presentation is made at the Gavea Angels Forum, now, we have a meeting, which is the last meeting that's sponsored by Gavea Angels between the entrepreneur and the interested group of investors. And the objective there is exactly for the entrepreneur to get to know who's this group. So it is, as you said, the investors have to do a pitch for the entrepreneur. It is also the last chance for the entrepreneur, for the investors to ask the more generic questions about the entrepreneur itself before they embark on actual negotiation on the numbers, on the business model. They still getting to know each other now, so that's one thing we do. We also now, after that meeting, we're sending a deck note to the entrepreneur, a little bit of literature about what should you know about angels, what are some of the concepts, how to understand a term sheet. Here's a checklist already. He given a long checklist, so you're going to have to deal with that. If the negotiations advance, so we're trying to evolve on our system. So to gain time, once things evolve, they already know what they have to expect, what are the concepts. And what you're doing also beforehand, we've been running a few of those, and you're going to be running that tomorrow, what you call the investment readiness workshops, where you go through a checklist. We base that on a British program, the investment readiness program that was run by the British government for many years. It's basically a checklist. The company goes through. They really need the money. They really understand the concept. What stage of business you are, and then we have a 5-minute conversation and tell him, we still have to do this and that before you approach an angel investor or a seed capital investor. So that is a way to try to pre-screen some people, so don't have very green entrepreneurs to come to you and waste your time, basically. But my small question I had for the Brazilians on the table, perhaps, and also for the Mexicans, and even for the US, is a very small question. How do you do due diligence with labor liability, which is a small question? How you approach labor liability, questões trabalhistas?
I usually don't like to invest in the entrepreneur's company. I usually try to open a new company whenever we do this first investments. So this is a way of avoiding some of the possible labor issues that you might have, that the entrepreneur might have had before. Because there's really no guarantee, right? It's up to 5 years that the entrepreneur, a former employee can sue you here in Brazil and go after his rights or whatever. So usually I prefer, if it's not too much of a hassle, of starting up a new company, transferring the intellectual property to this new company, the brand and everything, and starting from scratch. It avoids a lot of hassle and a lot of trouble. I'm not sure that's possible for a VC because usually the company is a little bit larger and has done a lot more with the company. So go ahead and show us your way.
We spend a lot of our legal due diligence. Felipe here is here to say that. We spend a lot of time checking all the labor issues. We've never said no to an investment because of labor issues, but we try at least to quantify the size of the problem. But it's very complicated. After the investment, it gets costly because the company only hires regularly. I mean, with no kind of PJ or any kind of alternative ways. It gets really expensive for the company, but normally we increase the value of the investment. It's not a problem to do that. But we don't have this chance. It's not so easy for us to create a new company or to, we have to sleep for 5 years thinking that, well, after 5 years, then you won't have any problems with labor issues.
Well, we didn't have any case yet because we look at companies that are really starting with like 1 or 2 employees only or none. So, but it's an issue in Brazil, and I think it's a concern that's going to be forever or until labor laws change here.
Well, many of the companies that we invest in are new, so we have the opportunity to invest in totally new companies or restructure the ones that are just starting, just around 20%, I guess. They are already working, and we have to do this legal, complicated follow-up and financial follow-up of the company. We pretty much have that part of that new company, no liabilities.
And this is a problem we don't have, which is nice. But as I was thinking of that, we do have a problem that you may not have. So much of our entrepreneurs' compensation is stock and stock options, and the management team, when they come on, sure enough, you find out later on that the CEO promised a consultant stock options or an attorney, and it wasn't on the cap table, and this comes out 2 years later, or he'd hired a new CEO and promised the stock options at a very low value, like an originating value, and then the term sheet comes in, and then they have to offer the stock options at the term sheet value, not the original lower value. So that stock options causes us more problems for sort of employment and management in the beginning of an investment, not the obligations of employment.
Well, I'd like to thank Katherine.